My life put me in a position where I had no choice. I was battling with trying to get sober, having the desire to change, but nothing sticking, nothing working, because the drugs were the only thing that gave me this sense of warmth, this sense of safety, even though it wasn't safe whatsoever. And so, drank ayahuasca for the first time 48 hours after my dad died. And it was the most pivotal, massive, transformative experience of my life. It had nothing to do with the experience of the plants and everything to do with the grief and the container of love that was set within that medicine experience. And so that changed my life because it finally gave me the full spectrums of the human experience.
Today's conversation is one that you don't want to miss. My guest is Danny Hallam, a shaman, healer, farmer, and entrepreneur who has walked an extraordinary path, from struggling with addiction and trauma to finding profound healing through plant medicine, dreamwork, and spiritual practice. In this episode, Danny shares what it means to surrender, the lessons he's learned through shamanic traditions, and the power of psychedelics in deep healing. We also dive into his latest endeavor, Tempo de Luz, a sacred space he's building for healing and community. If you've ever been curious about plant medicine, dreamwork, or breaking free from limiting patterns, this conversation will challenge and inspire you. I'm your host, Ryan Olexson, and this is Beyond 80%. Hi, Danny.
Hi.
How are you? How you doing?
I'm so good. Happy to be here.
Good. I'm happy to have you here. Welcome to Beyond 80%. The first thing I want to know from you is, what is something that you have recently unlearned, and how did you unlearn it?
Great question. I've been the last day running through my head, trying to figure out the many things that I think I'm constantly unlearning to figure out which one I should talk about. I think what comes to mind is how to listen. And I've been experiencing this immense practice, and with all of these new transitions in my life and being around, young children more and a new partnership, like all of my tools that have because probably one of the best compliments I get so often is Danny, you're such a great listener. And I'm having this experience of all of my listening skills aren't working for me right now. The last 10 years, mostly single and deeply entrenched into my work. It's all of my professional listening skills take a very different set of listening skills and family dynamics and union, and it's more of this conceptual being in all of these new spaces and really learning how even my mastery that exists in my workspace or with clients means nothing when it comes to the new environments and the new structures and the whole new ways of living. And it's been this experience of really coming back into center of okay, here's my foundation. Here's the skill set. Here are the basic tenets of active listening that I engage in often, and then trying to integrate those into all of these new practical experiences. And I guess as I'm speaking, the thing I'm really unlearning is more listening to the presence of another human and their experience, and the more day-to-day type experiencing, rather than dropping into this analytical, let's understand the depths and the thing behind the thing and all of the unspoken things, knowing when that type of listening is so inappropriate.
I feel like many people have the opposite problem, where they listen. Well, they don't really listen, and they don't want to go any deeper than that. So I love that you just brought that up, because it sounds like you're saying listening to someone who just needs to maybe vent or talk versus trying to kind of dig in with them and help them from a therapeutic standpoint.
Yeah. It's just how my whole life I've always been in that depths. And now as I'm going through this massive initiation into learning how to live as a family in these new environments to where it's like, I'm not just alone all of the time and this and that. It's like, okay, not every moment is for the depth. And I'm glad that you were giving me this reflection of like this inversion of typically people are like trying to figure out the opposites, because it offers me humility and like a breath to kind of remind myself of like my whole life journey kind of has been this inverted experience compared to the status quo. And then that's kind of this experience that I'm in of it's still kids got to get to school in the morning and we got to cook dinner, and it could be exactly that and nothing deeper to it.
Yeah. Well, and to go from being single and having this independent life to bam, like most of us that have kids, we get to have that like gradual process of like adding more people, adding a partner, adding kids. And you're just like, bam, thrown into it. So I can imagine that's a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And it's fun and it's beautiful. And it is this thing of like, oh, you're such a baby yourself, Danny. And all of these tools that has got you care and respect and everything that you have been focusing all of your energy on for the last decade is not what this is going to need.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I think it's better to start from your perspective of being a deep, totally empathic person than trying to learn that. I think that can be like even harder to dive into. So you're lucky on that front for sure.
Good. I'll take that.
Yes. So you are so many things. I'm going to try and hit some of them. You're a shaman, you're a healer, you're a farmer, you're an entrepreneur, and you're a deeply, deeply feeling person, as we know. But I want to share a little bit more about your background. So can you talk about your journey and your passions that have led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I find myself saying that I've kind of lived a very classic American trauma story of growing up in a broken home, alcoholism, neglect, which led to me being in positions of being abused as a child, which then led to massive and early substance abuse addiction and, experiencing heroin and opiates at age 15 and going through that whole process of massive, deep, intense opiate addiction while also finding my way to sobriety in my early 20s. And so in that, I got the opportunity to really experience true healing at a relatively early age compared to what most people's journeys on of, 30s, 40s, 50s, where they start to get those opportunities to like reflect on life. My life put me in a position where I had no choice. It was either I need to go to the depths of this reality and what is really real, or I'm going to die. I was battling with trying to get sober, having the desire to change, but nothing sticking, nothing working, because the drugs are the only thing that gave me this sense of warmth, this sense of I can exhale a little bit. I can have experience safety, even though it wasn't safe whatsoever. And so at the end of that, I gave up completely, had a suicide attempt that on paper should have killed me 3 times over. Near-death experience, incredible divine intervention, and going and really meeting God and telling me, oh no, you're just getting started. And surviving that, not only surviving, but I should have been hurt or handicapped or like a billion different things besides coming back healthy as could be with the opportunity to begin changing everything. And in that experience, I have had my first experience of surrender, where it's like, all right, I'm just a silly little human that knows nothing. I'm going to, for the first time in my life, allow God to start working in my life. And almost immediately, the people, places, and things started coming into my life to start showing me a new way forward. And so in my early 20s, I finally got the opportunity to start learning differently. And in that, first experience of surrender, I like almost immediately attracted my first spiritual teacher, started studying, the lineages of different mystery schools and metaphysics and the esoteric. And then the first did that was really deep into that study for 2 to 3 years. When I was asked to begin teaching some of those things that I was studying, that like, oh, there's a piece missing here. And this piece is learning how to be in my body. This piece is learning how to heal trauma. And so in that, I transitioned and signed up for massage therapy school. And then going into that training opened my whole entire world to like the actual healing of trauma and understanding the nervous system and understanding our bodies and understanding the molecular memories that are stored. The body is the most metaphysical supercomputer that exists in its memory and its storage. And in that, I was around the same time where I was planning like, oh, I need to go drink this ayahuasca stuff. And because I think that's the only thing that can heal me. And within that decision, found my way to Colombia and met the plant medicines again. And my first trip to go drink ayahuasca, I found out my father passed away unexpectedly. And it was the most pivotal, massive, transformative experience of my life. In a sense that had nothing to do with the experience of the plants and everything to do with the grief and the container of love, care, tolerance that was set within that medicine experience that gave me a firsthand opportunity to like grieve in a real human way and allow every feeling to come to the surface, to give my space the opportunity to dance with all of the thoughts that were coming with this incredible psychological process that happens when a son loses a father. And in that, felt like I got the healing in just a few days that I was looking for my whole life, and had a few experiences of like releasing 20 something years of pain in a 10-minute process. And so that changed my life because it finally gave me this experience of community and culture, of fully embracing, loving, accepting without judgment the full spectrums of the human experience. And that shifted me in a way that allowed me to really begin focusing on these, ancestral, shamanic, animalistic approaches to ceremony in the human experience. And in that, integrating that piece is where I found true freedom for the first time.
This is an amazing story, and your entire journey is fascinating. You mentioned surrendering, and I love this concept because I think in the way that you're meaning surrender is very different than just the mainstream in general, right? On one hand, I could say when somebody, especially someone who has an addiction, they're surrendering to it. But the way that you describe surrender almost sounds like you weren't willing to surrender to the emotions, which drove you to the addiction. And I wonder if that rings true for you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. 'Cause, especially in spiritual, new agey circles, you hear surrender, surrender, surrender. And then it's like, this is a very hard thing to quantify. I think for me, the experience of surrender, I reached this point where everything I thought that was the way to move through life, that was right or wrong, or everything that I thought was a good quality or a bad quality. And it was just this massive experience of, on one level, yeah, like I give up and I'm going to invite truth. I'm going to invite spirit. I'm going to invite God into my life to start pointing me and asking me to walk in a direction that I can reclaim a set of values, trying to maintain control over the pain inside of me, over the having no ability to feel and needing to use the drugs to numb every bit of pain that I've experienced, and accepting that there is a lot of pain there. And so also in that, like releasing shame, releasing judgments, releasing how though I thought the world saw me releasing the stigma of addiction and all of that coming into like a singular moment of release.
I really like this concept of surrendering is release, and it is that giving in of just, I don't know. You also brought up a great point about you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. You're told that this is how you become happy or you find success. And to go into a space and say, I don't know, like the fear, just me saying it to you right now brings up in myself. And I can completely relate to other people trying to walk around and nobody wants to admit that. I think it's so important to be able to admit that to yourself. And, you know, my next question is really around someone who's in a similar place. Maybe they're listening to this, maybe they have a friend or family member. In a practical sense, what does surrendering look like?
Mm. That's a tough one. When you ask that question, I'm thinking of, okay, is there going to be someone in the throes of an opiate addiction hearing this? And when I thought about that, it's like the first thing that comes to mind is like swallow your pride, you know, because it's like the mind of an addict is always trying to hide themselves from everything and hide from the world. And in that, like create these false masks to keep everything, the whole entire world at a distance. And it's like the first thing, it's like swallow the pride and allow yourself to be witnessed in the messiest of ways and raw and vulnerable. And if you can find one human where you can finally, even for a moment, take that mask off and say, I need help, that all of the resources and help and opportunities that are available will start opening up. But when it's, I'm going to ask for help, but I'm still going to hide myself, I'm still going to hang on to these false identities, it's going to be a rough go. If you're worthy and deserving of someone holding your hand to take you out of the dark holes, and you have to show up with a massive sword of honesty to get through it.
So how do you describe Temple de Luz, and what do you do to help people?
I'm going to answer it in reverse. In the last decade, myriad of evolution and my offering to the world, one-on-one healing spaces through somatic processing and body work to using breath work and in multi-modalities for the process of trauma into the ceremonial experience, the shamanic experience. And so ultimately, I can meet people wherever they're at and help them go through the initial phases of clearing the body and the trauma and preparing the experience to then cross those barriers and to see the world of spirit in a completely new way and go through those initiations, the shamanic rites of passage. Where I'm at now in the project that is happening, this culmination of every doorway that I have walked into who I am and this life I want to live. And when you were introducing me and using the terms and the farmer and the healer, and it's like, oh, that's funny how many different labels I've gotten from my simplest desire of wanting to live a very simple life in harmony. And ultimately, that is the desire that has created all of those parts of Danny that are coming together in this experience. We have 10 acres, 2 hours south of Los Angeles in the coastal hills, absolute gorgeous part of the world. And in that, the temple that we're building is this space that is rooted in harmony with the earth and building out the regenerative farm and the permaculture principles and building open and closed systems within this small ecosystem to give people the opportunity to see how much harmony is available to us at every moment. And we're co-creating with the world. And then in that, building out the actual temple where our ceremonies will take place, where our rites of passage will take place, where the depth of healing, not only our individual inner worlds, but then coming together and relearning how to be in community. And in that, giving every human the opportunity to let their unique individual skill set, their unique individual light begin to shine within the whole. And so with that, it really is a massive undertaking. It is this kind of ultimate vision that I've been building for a long time. The boundaries of our property will become a space for any person who comes here for healing, for growth, for care, for love. Like the moment they get onto the vibration of this land, they are given the opportunity to suspend the matrix. Yeah, it's early stages. I am working every day, just reclaiming the land, still building out what it's going to look like, our game plan. And in that, we'll be, hosting workshops and retreats within the structures that we have already as we're building it all out. This is the first time I've talked to it in a public way. And so, yeah, right now it really is this mental concept that has been growing both inside of me and my partner April separately for the last decade. And it's, figuring out how to put the pillars and the energetic roots down and allow the abundance to continue to flow. And it's quite overwhelming, and has been testing us both in ways that we could have never imagined. And with that, the doorway to surrender, to working hand in hand with the laws of nature and the laws of the universe has been expedited in ways that I could have never imagined.
All of this sounds so exciting, and I'm so honored that I get to hear from you first about it. I want to back up a little bit and just kind of cover some things that may not be obvious to listeners. Let's talk about some of the differences of the terms that we've used. So we talked about plants, plant medicine, shamanic healing. I want to call those things out and be more descriptive about what those are and what those entail.
Yeah. So I'll start with the term shamanism or shamanic. I think we're living in a day and age where there's a lot that the term's getting thrown around in ways that it hasn't been before. And I think it can get really confusing. To me, the shaman is a human that has the ability to communicate with the other side, to traverse into altered states, higher states, whatever we want to call them, of consciousness, to commune with the ancestors, commune with the spirits, commune with the spirits of the land and the plants and the trees and the animals. And it's ultimately all humans come from a shamanic culture. It is incredibly ancient, and it is incredibly primal and animalistic. And it allows us to traverse time and space in ways that are quite incredible. And I think the duty of the shaman is to use that skill set, that really language of communication through beyond this 3D realm, as a tool and an aid to help his brethren in his community to live a more holistic life. Oftentimes, especially in the modern era, shamanism is deeply connected to the use of entheogenic or psychedelic medicines. I don't believe they're intrinsically married. I know some of the most incredible shamans I've ever met won't touch a psychedelic plant and can attune into the frequencies of the beyond in ways many who do nothing but work with psychedelic plants can. And we're using the term plant medicine, which is often used to describe psychedelics. To me, I want to zoom back beyond that and really understand that all plants have the potency of being medicine, even the most poisonous ones. And to me, the basic tenet of the shamanic practice is that everything is a medicine and everything's a poison. And the thing that differentiates that is my own relationship to it. And so to me, when I personally think of plant medicine, I think about the roses, and I think about the herbs we're cooking with, and, the fire ciders I'm making, and, anything that is a plant to create more homeostasis and harmony within my life, my environment, and my body. And the addition of the plant medicines when we're specifically referring to psychedelics. And so to me, I don't just work with psychedelics. I want psychedelics are they're in my medicine cabinet as a tool to have a holistic approach to what I believe is the most harmonious way of living in this life.
When we're talking about plant medicines, and I appreciate the clarification, honestly, that it's not all psychedelics. I think that's a really good call out because I think they get intertwined with that. But when we're talking about plant medicines, does that also include all psychedelics, such as MDMA or LSD, that would be more of a synthetic psychedelic? Or are we just talking about plant medicines that are straight from the jungle?
Yeah, I think it's a great question that I do not have the ultimate authority to answer. I can tell you my perspectives. I think a lot of the psychedelic culture right now, out of ignorance, calls all psychedelics plant medicine. I mean, if we're looking at it from a very logical perspective, by going by definition of the word plant, how could we call this synthetic thing a plant medicine? That is my stance, my understanding, how I like to keep it. I think there's a lot happening in the modern culture where people are not understanding it now we're circling back to what I'm unlearning, to the depths of, do we even really know the language that we're using and we're adding to this? And for me personally, I have no, I think some of these synthetics are, with the right place and the right relationship in what each individual needs, I think they can give profound experiences and open the doors to profound results. So not anti-synthetics. What I am is that's not my world, and even using the term psychedelics can be a little interesting for me because psychedelics are really implying the expectation of the colors and the shapes and in this trippy experience. And to me, working with the plant medicines, especially the psychedelic ones, the fireworks are like the least important aspect of it to me. And I often, with the experience I have in doing this for quite some time, I find the fireworks aspect of it has begun to be like exhausting to me. And if I could figure out how to fast forward through that part of the journey and into the deep introspection and connection to the world around me, I would. I haven't figured that one out yet.
So what plant medicines have you personally worked with, and what are the differences between them?
That might be a couple-hour conversation, but I will speak to the ones that most people have heard of and I work with in a way of facilitating for others. And it can kind of open back up into this conversation of like, what is plant medicine? Because I also work with animal medicines that aren't plants. And so I guess I'll start there with the amphibian medicines, which I work with a medicine called Kambo and also a medicine called Bufo. The Kambo comes from the giant monkey tree frog. It's milky excretion that is collected from its skin. That is basically a cocktail of bioactive peptides that has immense medicinal and physical healing properties, as well as metaphysical and spiritual. Now, this medicine is not an entheogen. It does not have a psychoactive component. It is very much an ordeal and experiential medicine, but not psychedelic. Then the other amphibious medicine is the Bufo, which comes from the Bufo alvarius toad that is in the Southwest United States and in Mexico, or the Sonoran Desert toad. Same concept of the Kambo. The medicine that it produces comes from its secretions, and that is collected and dried out. And with this one, it is smoked, and its main alkaloid is the 5-MeO-DMT, which has become a really popular experience to have. This medicine gives people the experience of surrender, ultimate surrender. This medicine is a medicine of ultimate surrender. And when you can reach the point of fully letting go, you can have the most incredible mystical experience of completely merging with God, with this human identity being temporarily suspended to allow yourself to witness the intensity and massive potential of what being a spirit in a body actually is. There's many, many, many other aspects of healing with that particular medicine. That one's short. Your experience can be done in a couple of day setting or even a day process, because those experiences are going to be 30 minutes to an hour. And then the main plant medicines that I work with are Ayahuasca and San Pedro really are the two near and dear to my heart that I work with extensively, both in my own practice and with offerings to others. I also see these two medicines really metaphysically offer this masculine and feminine experience. The ayahuasca is often referred to as the grandmother of deeply feminine spirit. It is a nighttime medicine because it's a medicine of the unconscious, where you go on this deep inner visionary experience and healing journey, being guided by this spirit that we call ayahuasca. And then the San Pedro is kind of the opposite, where it's a very masculine medicine. It's like kicking back with a silly grandpa. And it's a medicine of being in the body. It is a medicine of sensation. It is a medicine of the heart. The, conquistadors named the Huachuma, which is the Quechua name for this cactus, San Pedro, because the first few conquistadors that experienced it said, oh, this is what standing at the gates of heaven is like. Oh, actually opening the heart. And so it got the name San Pedro, and like good Catholic fashion, they made it illegal. And, the cactus I also see is an incredibly sustainable medicine to grow, because it grows very easily. And if you harvest it right, every time you harvest, you're actually offshooting 5, 6, 7, 8 more cactuses. So these two medicines are, I would really claim them as my medicines, but really those 4 main ones that I work with are the combo, the bufo, the ayahuasca, and the San Pedro.
So coming from a shaman perspective, when someone comes to you, do they typically know what medicines they need or want? Or do you provide some guidance depending on what they're going through and maybe some of the ways that they're looking to surrender in their life?
My answer to that right now in this collective psychedelic renaissance we're experiencing, I would say the ayahuasca is the best marketer, and so often people, they watch a documentary or saw this thing and find their way to me, and they really know absolutely nothing about it other than there is this pull that I think this will help me. And that's probably what 50% of the people that find their way to me are coming from, this space of, I really don't know anything other than I feel this call inside of me that this will be really, really helpful. And so then in that, we can transition into really developing a plan of action or a proper prescription for them. There's things that I'm looking for and wanting to understand where a person is at and their goals and their intentions and their history of trauma and how much work they've done, to make sure they're prepared to experience these medicines, to have a positive experience. The thing about these medicines as well is they come with dangers. They come with, risks, as far as if we do too much too soon or we're not ready for them, we can blow our nervous systems out. We can, create more stress. And so for me, being a steward and an ally to the spirit of these plants, it is my job to coach people into the work they need to do beforehand, or, working with other medicines to build up to a certain experience they're looking for is really, really, really important. And giving people the tools to, build a sustainable way to achieve their goals of well-being and health. I think, our Western McDonald's mind, often people can come to the ayahuasca thinking it's going to fix their lives. And when they're done with their weekend retreat, they're going to start living extraordinary lives and all of their problems will be solved. If I had a medicine that did that, I would let you know, but they're not. These medicines are incredible teachers, incredible allies, and incredible tools that want to help us empower ourselves to create the sustainable, healthy relationships and homes and lives. I think as a human race, we have forgotten. And to me, that's why the vision of Temple de Luz has the sustainable farm. It has all of the integrative work. It has all of the modality work that has nothing to do with a psychedelic experience that will prepare us for it. Because a lot of work goes into healing, and a lot of work goes into breaking the chains of trauma, breaking the chains of abuses, and reclaiming a truth that we all have the opportunity to drop in and rest into the depth of our hearts. And so for me, this work, the shamanic path takes a lot of really deep zooming back to see the collective wounds and where we're at as humans on this planet. And to me, the plants want to help us all heal the bigger wounds. That is the way we're living in relationship. The Lakota people, they say, aho mataki asin, which means to all of my relations. And to me, these medicines, these plants are nothing but lessons in relationship. How am I relating to this medicine I'm drinking? How am I showing up to my family? How am I stewarding harmony in my life? Or am I coming from a perspective of I'm going to come and sit at the altar of ayahuasca and just take and say, heal me, heal me, heal me, heal me, heal me. I guarantee you'll be just opening another circuit of addiction until you can drop into the experience of the power is in my hands. Everything else around me is a resource and a tool to help me get there. And until there's like a massive moment of understanding the power that each of us have as a human and the responsibility that comes into how am I relating with the world around me, and then that's the point where I have seen people come to the deepest depths of true, sustainable, and permanent healing.
You bring up a good point, and I think a lot of people who have done a ceremony or two can relate to this. I know I can. I was one of those people who came into the ceremony and thought, I'll do this once, I'll be fixed and I'll be good to go. But like you mentioned, found out very quickly that that was actually just the start of the journey of healing overall. So one thing I want to clarify, especially for those listeners who have never participated in a ceremony, is what is it like during the ceremony and what can be expected while participating or sitting with ayahuasca?
Yeah, so this is a two-part answer because there are some commonalities of, things to expect with this particular medicine, while also letting everyone know that every single person's experience is going to be incredibly different and unique to themselves. And not only is it going to be unique and different to every single person in the room, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, but every individual's journey, their second, third, fourth, fifth, eighth, 20th time is always unique and incredibly different than the time beforehand. What I can speak with confidence is this medicine has a unique ability to give every single person exactly what they need. And sometimes there's riddles to solve to get to that understanding of this was exactly what I needed. And to me, that's the mystery. That's the dancing with the realm of spirit. That is the dance of surrender. Of, am I going to come to the altar of this incredible spirit while still convincing myself I know best? Or am I going to open myself wholly and fully to what is wanted to give to me? Some common, and often people are most scared of the purge of the ayahuasca. So the purge it's the release. It's the letting go. This can often come from drinking this medicine of having physical vomiting or having, experiences in the bathroom with diarrhea. This is a big, what we call the cleaning process of, coming to these medicines and these medicines really dropping into our cellular makeup and allowing the density of emotion, of pain, of trauma to be released in a physical experience. And sometimes it can be, the purge can happen in needing to let out screams of rage that has been trapped inside of you since you were 5 years old. Sometimes it's uncontrollable laughter because you've never actually had a safe place to be joyful. There's such a myriad of different experiences. It's a medicine we do at nighttime, laying down. Sometimes it can be challenging to walk and difficult to have, our proper motor function. And then the internal experience, a typical experience is within an hour to an hour and a half of drinking this medicine, going into a visionary experience. It's what we call the fireworks, the light show, and then that eventually opening the doorway and transcending into this deeply introspective and interpersonal process within the ayahuasca. It eventually comes down to completing the night and finishing the ceremony, typically in a deep state of euphoria and contentment. That is a typical flow in climax and resolve for this medicine, while really hammering in that it's not always like that, and it can always be incredibly different. It's also a medicine we highly recommend doing multiple nights in a row, because oftentimes just drinking one night of ayahuasca we're leaving a lot of unfinished business. So sometimes the first night can really crack us open and make us raw and vulnerable. And then the resolution comes the second night. Sometimes there's multiple points of resolution and solution through our inner journey with her throughout a single night.
Yeah. And I think this next question I have for you kind of plays off of this, and hopefully you can answer it. Because someone asked me this question and I wasn't sure the best way to answer it. Why do some people do more than one ceremony?
It's back to relationship. If we want the most fit body that we could possibly have, would you go to the gym one time? And I know many people that have had one experience and they got exactly what they needed, and this journey of their life was complete, and they went back to, doing the other work that they need to do. But when it comes to the question of why do people continue to come back, it's, well, for one, what opens inside of us is a deep and profound experience of seeing how vastly different reality actually is. That is what has been taught to us. And some of us have lots and lots and lots of things inside of us that we need all the help we can get to unpack, to unlearn, and to heal. Another aspect that I see is actually the reason why a lot of people continue to come back is really that first thing I spoke of my first experience with the ayahuasca is the community experience. Oftentimes these circles of these medicine circles are some of the first and only places where the community dynamics are raw, open, honest, vulnerable, non-judgmental. And I think even more so from the medicine, more so than the medicine, people are craving that more than that, but they're finding the only way to that is through these medicine spaces. And, I think as facilitators and people pioneering and holding this culture right now, it is up to us to be more responsible, to figure out ways how to cultivate those community dynamics and experiences in ways that don't always involve the psychedelic medicine.
One thing that comes up a lot around psychedelics, and especially ayahuasca, is this idea of having a bad trip. And I know this question is probably over asked, but I love your perspective on it. So I'd love to ask you, when someone is going through a bad trip, what do you recommend for them?
Yeah. So my truth is that there's no such thing as a bad trip. There is a psychedelic experience in a not so great environment, and without the support to be held in whatever the medicine is bringing to the surface. And that's not to say this work is always rainbows and lollipops. Sometimes the journeys can be really what we would label as dark, and, have threads of fear of, that. And to me, it's always the opportunity of this deep intelligence that is this medicine asking us to get comfortable in spaces we're not comfortable in. And then some of us have some really deep hidden darkness in ourselves and in traumas and experiences. And sometimes we have spent a lifetime trying to repress and avoid this thing that happened to us when we were 4 or 5. And we have done a really good job at convincing ourselves that it never happened. And then we have a psychedelic experience that is bringing that from the depths of our psyche and right into our faith, asking us to reconcile and to work with it and to deal with it. And so when you're in the proper setting with the proper facilitators and help there to love and guide you through any of the bad trips, I guarantee you those are going to be the greatest opportunities you've ever given yourself. So to me, a bad trip really is an incomplete trip, so to speak. And yeah, this work is not for the faint of heart, and it can be very confronting. And with that, the most beautiful processes that you can ever go on. I tell people it's like, sometimes there's what we call like a freak out or, this explosive movement within a ceremony container. 99.9% of the time, that is somebody's fragmented pieces of their psyche and their soul exploding the lines of fragments that have happened inside of them to then bring it all back together in wholeness. And so to me, those are the most brave, courageous people in the room.
I love that. I love that outlook on it because I think that idea of having a bad trip is what holds a lot of people back from doing it. And to your point, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. But again, we're back to that theme of surrendering.
Yeah. And this medicine has a deep desire to help us reintegrate our relationship to emotion. And we live in a culture that is like not good with emotion. And most of us have been taught to not feel and that it's not safe to feel. And, these people that are finding their way to these medicines tend to be highly sensitive and intuitive people that have never had a place to be highly sensitive, intuitive people. And so with that, sometimes the first bridge we have to cross is moving through some of the most uncomfortable emotions that we have been avoiding feeling our entire lives. It's what I call like the first part of the healing journey is healing the back catalog of emotions that we have never felt because they're still inside of you, and all of those unfelt emotions and feelings that have never given the space to be free. Those are the things that become the unconscious puppet masters that are pulling the strings from our unconsciousness that are ultimately affecting every choice and relationship that we have in our life. And, it can be really scary and really terrifying to deal with those things.
One recent topic that's been popping up a lot is this plant called iboga or ibogaine. It's also known as, I think that's the more clinical version name of it. And I'm interested to get your perspective because it is being talked about a lot, especially when it comes to opioid addictions. I think the latest stats that I saw for sobriety after a year, this is a year after the ceremony, is somewhere between 90 and 93%. And then the next medication that we have from a pharmaceutical perspective is around 7 to 8% success rates. So as somebody who did struggle with an opioid addiction, I mean, what do you think about this plant in general? And also, in a clinical standpoint, how would this kind of shift the landscape of psychedelics in general?
Iboga is a plant that I've been building a relationship with, that I'm happy to speak to my personal experiences with. I'm not in a place to claim any sort of authority with it. And iboga is unlike any other plant I've ever worked with. After my first iboga experience, I don't remember who I was talking to, but someone was asking me about it. And I'm like, well, we call ayahuasca the grandmother, but compared to iboga, ayahuasca feels like a spoiled teenager in this like ancientness in its intelligence. And so ibogaine is the extracted alkaloid of the root bark that is the iboga. And so there's, I guess the difference between, iboga and ibogaine is the ibogaine is just the isolated alkaloid and the iboga is the whole plant. So the ibogaine tends to be not as long, but far more intense and far more dangerous. And so that's why the ibogaine really you only see in very clinical settings with the doctors and the IVs and all of this. And the iboga can be dangerous as well with particular heart conditions. And really, it's the QT intervals that need to be checked. And if you're at a normal place, there should be very little risk with it. The iboga is so like it. There's such a sedative experience to it that it like really, really, really slows your heart. I've never experienced ibogaine. I don't have any desire to. As I said earlier, I'm more interested in communing with the spirit and the consciousness of the plants than I am having a psychedelic experience. My particular intention for working with iboga was to heal my brain from, having traumatic impacts and brain damage since I was a kid. And I'm not even going to try to talk the chemistry to it because I don't understand it quite well. But what I do understand is that there's nothing else on the planet that works with the brain quite like this. Most of your psychedelics are working with a few different receptors in the brain or either serotonin or the dopamine. The iboga is pretty much working with even the receptors that we don't understand anything about. And so the first part of the iboga process is it's like 3 12-hour processes. The first one is you take the iboga and you're pretty much can't move for 12 hours in your bed on this wild visionary experience. And sometimes it's just random, nonsensical, doesn't make any sense, not very personal. And so this is what people often refer to as the defragmentation, and where it's described where the iboga just kind of comes in and defragments all of the clutter and the open channels in your brain and gives you a clear out. My personal experience with this first 12 hours is quite different. It was towards the end of it was kind of that random defragmentation part. But the first 6 hours were walking into the realm of the ancestors and having experiences of closure and last conversations with loved ones that have passed on in quite a profound way that led me to experiences of healing in so many of my blind spots that I didn't even know were blind spots. Then the next 12 hours, and it's pretty much like clockwork in your body, 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours. The second 12 hours, you can start to move around, but you're still moving really slow. And this is where pretty much people are like a newborn baby. They're so sensitive. They're so open. They're so tender. They're so, just really, really cracked open. And this is where a lot of the more therapeutic aspects of a container will come into play, of being able to process with people and talking more and connecting more while also being in a deeply sensitive state as well. Some visions might continue and it might just be a very sense experience. And then the final 12 hours is oftentimes described as just complete euphoria. And some people can finally go to sleep in the final 12 hours. I was not one. I was up and communing. And I had the channel open to iboga for 8 or 9 days where, I could drop into meditation first thing in the morning and go straight back into the visionary experience. And it just felt like he was with me nonstop, still feel it. And this is about 5 or 6 months ago. And they gave me a complete reset. It felt like my brain had a factory reset and went back to the way it was supposed to operate before I started doing drugs and before I had the brain damage, and there's still very much aspects of I have to work really, really, really hard to bring my brain back up to coherence and back up to speed. As far as specifics with addictions, what is so great about this medicine for breaking addictions is that it will lock into the opiate receptors for 2 to 3 weeks after the initial dose. So this is when people in acute withdrawal can basically bypass the withdrawal experience and drop straight into the emotional healing that needs to take place in order to stay sober. So it's this, kind of intensive hit every target in one shot type experience, to where you're giving yourselves the relief of eliminating the withdrawals because you're having this medicine lock into your opiate receptors, and so that's what turns the withdrawal off, while it's also giving you the opportunity to go into the depths of your consciousness and the depths of your soul to initiate the deeper healing that needs to take place. That's what I have to say about it for now. I'm really, really excited and love the relationship I have been building with this medicine and will continue to build. And I still feel like I know absolutely nothing about it other than being in a very experiential, personal process with it.
Yeah, we'll have to keep up with you on where you're at with that, because it's such an interesting medicine. And, I've been fascinated just from my own research with being in school and therapy and counseling, the profound results that iboga and ibogaine have had on people. And so I'm really excited to see how this plays out, both from the shamanism side, but also from the clinical side. So as we're talking through this, I can imagine someone listening who doesn't have experience with psychedelics, and they're like, what in the heck? Why would anyone do this? And I mean, just in my own experience, I'm such an advocate for psychedelics as a tool for some deep, deep healing. So I'm curious to know, because I know when I get skepticism from my own circles about psychedelics and what it can do for people and the healing that it provides, I mean, it's hard for me to deal with that skepticism, because I'm like, what do you mean? It's so great. But that's because I've participated in this before. So I'm curious from your perspective, when you get those type of comments or the skepticism around psychedelics and the true healing power, how do you handle that and what do you say?
Most people, if they found a way to have a conversation with me, there's no skepticism. Like, they can definitely be like curious and will it work for me? But I really don't think I deal with like immense skepticism firsthand too much. And, for me, and always, it's like the proof is in the pudding. It's like, well, I'm telling you firsthand how much better my life continues to get, how much happier and how much deeper and fulfilling my relationships are becoming when I continue to do this work. And I have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that I could call right now, and they will tell you the same thing. And so I don't know that I have an answer to this question. I think for me, I don't ever have a need to convince anyone of anything. And so I think I probably won't entertain it and just be like, okay, that's fine. If that's what if you've already decided what this experience will be for you before you have the experience, great. That's totally okay for you to do. That's not a way I want to live, and I want to have the experience before I decide what it is, and I don't think these medicines are for everyone. And I think that's okay. I'm very content in my knowing, like, I don't need anyone to do it if they don't want to do it. And I really don't think I've spent much time face to face with that much skepticism.
Well, I need to hang out in your circles. Damn.
I think that comes with being such a hermit and introvert.
Fair.
It's also, with anyone that knows me or knows my journey and knows me and who I was 15 years ago, it's really hard to look at me and tell me you're skeptical with the massive amount of transformation I've experienced, and I've had friends from my old party days and siblings that eventually get to the point of like, oh, I would like to try, or I'd like to do it. And I've also always had people that love me enough to say, that's definitely not for me, but I'm not gonna, like, if it's working for you, great. And it's like, yeah, if you knew me in the versions of me that I used to be and what I have made of my life from working with these plants, it's kind of really hard to be skeptical. And so, with that, I think especially if we're new to this work and we, we can get really excited and everyone needs to do this and it's going to help you so much. And I think the advice I give to that is just keep doing your work and people are going to see it and then people are going to want it.
I think too, that speaks to what you said earlier about when people actually initially come to you and they say they feel called to it. And I think that's probably a bigger point here to make is, well, and also why you wouldn't really come across the skepticism, because if someone feels called to it, they are meant to do it. And I do believe that. And I have a very similar experience, and other people that I've sat in ceremony with say the same thing. They saw it everywhere. They felt called to it. They were curious enough to explore it. So I think there's also something to pull from that as well, that, this medicine, when it's calling you, you're meant to do it and you feel the profound effects from it.
Very much so.
All right. So I want to switch gears real quick and talk about Dreamwork. So we've had a couple of different conversations offline about this, but I want to give you the floor and hear it from you and how you explain this process.
Yeah, to me, the dream is the psychedelic work. It's the journey work. It's creating the dream circuit. Working with our dreams is the opportunity to know ourselves in the deepest ways we possibly can, because every night we go into this dream space and spend a third of our entire lives in this dream space. And to me, the dream work is understanding the subconscious, understanding the unconscious, understanding this visionary psychedelic aspect of who we are as humans without the psychedelics. And to me, the plants give us an opportunity to awaken to the dream without going to sleep, into the subconscious, and we go into this visionary symbolic experience, just like our dreams. It's our dreams are not literal experiences, but they operate in the language of symbolism. Our subconscious mind does not think in language and does not speak in Spanish or English, but it speaks in images. And so to me, dream work is truly understanding the symbolism of this world and the symbolism of reality, and using the images both within our internal experience and the images that we're constantly looking at out here to give ourselves the opportunity to interpret our walk through life to the deeper experience. We're circling back to that first conversation of maybe I don't need to be so deep in everything, but really it's like, why not? And so dreams are a big part of the integration work and the prep work that I work with humans in. And ultimately, if I have people work with their dreams for 2 months before they go on a journey, they've developed a practice around surrendering to a different aspect of the mind. And so I think at its basic level, that is an immensely positive experience before going on a journey. And then especially afterwards, to really help integrate all of these unconscious aspects and traumas and pains that have come to the surface through some of these, avenues and ordeal experiences with the medicines. And so ultimately I've been studying dreams for 20 years and have a deep understanding of the language of mind. And I truly see the dream circuit is being the circuit to knowing the lowercase self and the capital S selves, and developing and integrating a relationship between those two aspects of self to live a more holistic and full life. And so to me, it's this giant web that is woven through the shamanic spaces, the meditation spaces, and it's all, how do we build a deeper relationship to the dream? How do we awaken to the dream?
So how do you work in this space when you're starting out with a client?
Yeah. Is someone who has never worked with their dreams before, the first thing is start recording your dreams. And it can be as simple as that. Sometimes it's months of waking up and just saying, I remember this part, or I woke up feeling like this. And then a week or two, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we'll start our dream recalls will start opening up. And eventually those same people that took a week to even have a feeling being remembered from their dream are then sending me novels of their dream experiences, and it depends on what level people want to go there. It's everything from the basics of simply learning how to interpret your own dreams and working with the dream interpretation, all the way up into the more advanced lessons of like having a shared dream experience and us intentionally meeting in a space and consciousness through our dreams, or lucid dreaming or astral projection, and all the way to going in our dream space to checking on our mental creations, of like how is this thing that I'm creating in business or in life or whatever, there's ways of going in through the doorways of the dream space and checking on that creation in the etheric space, and then all the way through archetype works. And it's like an immense course of study to even come close to sharing what we're actually capable of in our dreams. And unless we are disciplined in a commitment to wake up every morning and write down our dreams, none of the other stuff can take place. And so that's, what I encourage everyone is like, just start putting attention on your dreams. Usually when people say, I've never remembered a dream or I can't remember a dream, it's one of two things. Either smoke a lot of weed or you don't have a dream journal and have never tried. Because every single person that has gotten a dream journal and that has started just the discipline of waking up and writing in your dream journal the first thing every morning, even if it's weeks before you remember a dream, every single one of them has always got to a place of full recall with their dreams.
Are there certain symbols or types of dreams that people should really pay attention to?
Some common ones are like in relationship ending ones, because we as a species, we don't remember the language, but, I woke up and I dreamt that my spouse was cheating on me. And then you spend the next 3 days fighting with them and treating them as if they really cheated on you. But that dream, so there's two rules of dreams really, is everything in the dream is about the dreamer, and every person, place, or thing within the dream is an aspect of the dreamer. So even though you are dreaming of your spouse cheating on you, your soul is telling you, hey, there's ways you're cheating yourself right now. There's some ways you're not being honest with yourself. There is an inventory that needs to take place, because this person symbolically in your mind also represents your own unique commitment to self. And so there's something out of balance. There's some way you're cheating yourself out of your own commitment to your own path as soul in this world. So that's a common one that I just like to give that initial example to, because even that simple understanding, how many fights is that understanding going to save from happening?
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to use myself as an example for this next question. I've had dreams that are what I would consider everyday dreams. I wake up, I remember them, think that was weird, move on with my life. But then I've had dreams where I've woken up and the experience is so impactful. I woke up, I thought I was still there, or my heart's racing, my body's having a reaction to it, or it was so vivid. Are dreams just all the same, or are there specific dreams that, hey, that might have been something, maybe it was a premonition, or maybe it's a memory from a past life? Like, are there differences with dreams when you wake up and you are deeply impacted by them versus when you wake up and you're like, I dreamed of a dancing zebra and don't think anything of it?
Yeah. So the way I teach it, the way I understand it, is that there's, seven particular levels of our mind, our vehicle for consciousness. And then there's levels within those levels, within those levels, within those levels. It's the never ending fractal. But for us humans, breaking it down to those basic 7 levels. And so when we dream at night, we're often dreaming in our consciousness can be very hyper focused in each one of those levels individually, and we can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so that is one aspect. It's, why sometimes our dreams in black and white, and sometimes they're in like full color, and sometimes they look like cartoons, and sometimes it looks like a real life. So that can give us an understanding of what level of consciousness our perspective is dreaming from. And the other thing is, it depends on what's going on in our lives. Because also every night, what I dream about tonight is going to give me feedback with my conscious life experience for the last 2 days. So, if you're having this big experience in life and you're praying for a breakthrough and you have this dream that like, oh my gosh, like really grabs your attention, chances are that is that breakthrough, that understanding your soul is trying to give you. Sometimes it's, if it's out of the blue and we typically don't remember our dreams, it's your soul like grabbing your attention, like, please see this, please wake up, please take a look at this. And ultimately that's what nightmares are too. It's the soul begging the human to start making a change.
All right. I'll keep that in mind for my next big one. How has your perspective on life changed since you've started this path?
A million different ways. As a human that spent most of my life in tragedy and not wanting to be here and having the hardest time to see beauty and love and like this, there's magic in this world. And I think that ultimately biggest thing this work and this path has given me is such a deep sense of purpose. And in that deep sense of purpose, such a deep desire to find the beauty even in the murkiest of waters, and really be humbled in the understanding of how much magic and beauty and joy is here at every moment.
I love that answer. And with a lot of the episodes I've been working with, one of those core themes that I keep hearing from these guests are the magic in life. There's so much magic in life. So I love that you just said that. Has there ever been a moment where you wanted to totally ditch this path you were on and you were like, I'm ready to just give up. This is too much?
Yeah, at least once a month.
How do you get yourself away from that or off of that idea? What brings you back?
Yeah. What brings me back is knowing that even when I want to give up, I have deep faith that I'm going to. And it's almost like I could walk away. I could go, do something incredibly different at any point. And I know that in my heart of hearts that is an option if I choose it. And they're at this level, like that's not an option whatsoever. And is just like so deeply attuned to this is exactly why I'm here and exactly why I came for. And I found myself learning how to give myself deep allowance, and I'm okay with giving myself the space to be honest if I'm in those spaces, and to be with those feelings and those sensations with this deep knowing and faith and trust that I'm not going to stay there very long.
I love how honest you are about this. I've noticed in different spiritual communities that when someone gets into this space, they're enlightened, they're spiritual, they've been through ceremonies, they come off as if everything's great. They're super positive. They're always happy. They never feel these negative things. And I think the honesty that you're sharing is actually the truth in this, that, as a human, you're going to feel all these emotions, and it's not necessarily about feeling specific emotions over others, or that when you have these moments where you grow as a person, that you're now done growing. There's no more for you to learn. And now you become this guru. And I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, because I think that's so important, especially in this community and all the people that you find in it, and people who are just starting on their journey, to realize that you can have these highs, but you can also have these lows.
Yeah, it's the human experience, there's our minds are always looking for a game to play, and sometimes the game is how spiritually advanced am I, and how much healing have I done, and and we develop these identities around it. And then our humanness comes into play and it directly confronts this identity that we have been creating. And so we can either choose to go through another archetypal death process of allowing that identity to dissolve to meet the truth of the physical and human experience that we're having, or we can create another loop of repression. And, you know, it's tricky. It is tricky, you know, especially walking the healing arts. And oh my gosh, I've done all of this healing. And for some reason, I convinced myself once I heal this that I'm never going to feel bad again in my entire life. And it's just unrealistic. You know, it's chop wood, carry water. You know, I can build the understanding to know that I have confidence of walking myself through every challenge that comes in life. And some of them are going to wreck me and some of them are going to be easy to come through. But that is the beauty of it, is like, I get to feel the depths of pain and I get to feel the height of joy. And if I repress one of those, I'm repressing the other as well.
Well said. Well said. All right. So what is next for Danny? Where are you going to be the next time we have you on the show?
Yeah, right here in California. Hopefully more food has been grown and more buildings have been built and the compost pile is much bigger and I might have a haircut and this is home and where I'm going to root down and anchor to and build the ark, so to speak.
It has been so awesome to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. I have learned so much. I'm sure our listeners have. Your story is so incredible. It's inspiring. And I'm so glad and honored that I could share it with everyone here today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to use my voice and share my experience.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and further topics we can explore on this podcast together. So leave a comment below or reach out via email at beyond80%@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an opportunity to think, question, and evolve. I'm your host, Ryan Olexson, and this is Beyond 80%.